Hello.
Hello, Haini.
Hello.
How are you?
I am fine.
So let's go to week 7,
Okay.
at the middle of April,
Hmm.
April 2021, just 15th of April 2021. So today we have a very, very, very interesting topic in psychology, so-called social psychology. How do you know? What do you think about social psychology? What is social psychology? Your
Hmm.
definition.
My own
Yeah, yeah.
definition. Hmm. Hmm.
What do you think? What is the meaning of social psychology? It is the sociology,
I think. Hmm.
the same. We
Hmm.
have a science with the title of sociology. Another branch of psychology, very important branch of psychology. It is called social psychology. For example, in applied psychology,
Hmm.
social psychology is very important. Why? Because now there is a scientific branch in psychology which is called cyber psychology, the behaviors of people in cyberspace, in virtual space, virtual world. Cyber psychology. Cyber psychology is a very important, very significant, very crucial field of psychology, applied psychology. All of them are related to social psychology. So, what do you think about the meaning of social psychology? And why we call it psychology, not sociology?
Hmm.
What is psychology? If you
Psychology
remember, we had a definition of psychology. What is psychology?
is the
You remember?
study of it's
Uh-huh.
the study of like mind,
And only
and
mind?
um thinking.
The scientific studying of behaviors and mental processes. Do you remember? The scientific studying, the systematic studying of behaviors and mental processes.
Hmm.
This is the basic, very simple definition of psychology. And we said that if we enter the object, the target, the keyword of any branch of psychology to this definition, it is the definition of psychology for that keyword. For example, the keyword of development is change.
Hmm.
What does it mean when we say development, human development? It is about change, lifelong changes. So, what is developmental psychology? The study of behavioral and mental process changes. It is developmental psychology. Or what is personality psychology? What is the keyword of personality? Relatively consistent traits. So personality psychology is the scientific studying of relatively consistent behaviors and mental processes. It is the definition of personality psychology. What is the keyword of clinical? It is mental disorders. Disorder is the keyword of clinic. So what is the definition of clinical psychology? Clinical psychology is the scientific study of behavioral disorders or mental disorders. You enter the keyword of every branch of psychology to the basic definition of psychology. What is the basic definition of psychology? Psychology is the scientific study of behaviors and mental processes. It is the basic definition. So developmental psychologists, they're studying of changes of behaviors and mental processes. They study of, for example, evolution and other things. And now we are talking about the social psychology. What is the keyword of society? What does it mean, society? Do you know what are the dimensions of a human being? Do you know? What are the dimensions of human being?
Mm,
How many dimensions, how many functions, how many approaches we can have to a one single person? At first, my first dimension is that I am a body, biological approach. I am a body. Before everything, I am a body, like other animals, like other mammals. Just to today, some hours before entering the class, there was a voice chat in Clubhouse about this topic,
mm,
human or animal. This is the problem. They were talking, they were discussing the subject that if human being is a human specific being or not, it's something, some types of animals. So the first dimension of every human being is his or her body. It is biological dimension. The second one, in addition to my body, I have some emotional, cognitive, psychological features, traits. It is the psychological dimension. So with this, until now, we have two dimensions, biopsychological. Third one is I live, you live, we live together. It is society. We are not alone. It is very important. The major part of every human action is motivated or rejected or suppressed or inspired by other people. It is called social. So until now, we have three dimensions. A human being is a biopsychosocial being, three dimensions. And the final dimension is about our ethics, our morality, our spirituality, the meaning of life, something behind every human's everyday actions, life is life, daily life. It is our spirituality. So finally, we have four dimensions, at least four dimensions. We are a bio, psycho, socio, spiritual being. So you see that within four major dimensions of us, one major dimension is human being is a social being. There are several parts in your brain which are called social brain. Social brain are the parts of brain which are involved, which are engaged with your social functionings, your interpersonal relationships as a family member, as a love partner, as a student, as an individual for yourself in the uh, eyes of other people, how they are looking at you, how they are evaluating you, how do you think about their evaluation, how do you judge their evaluation, how do you think about other people's again. These are your social approach. These are your social dimensions. So we have a major part which is called society. What is the keyword of society? Society are others, everyone, everything which is not biological, which is not psychological, and which is not spiritual. It is called social. Your mother is a member of your society, your own society. Also, it is very near to you. Your father, your sibling, your family members are the society with the least distance with you, but they are other people. They are not you, they are other people. With this keyword, we want to talk about the definition of social psychology. Social psychology is the scientific studies of interaction between your behaviors and mental processes and others' behaviors and mental processes. Interaction, especially how other people's affect your behaviors and mental processes. The scientific studying of interactive behaviors and mental processes with other people. If you are impressed or you are impressive. It's very, very simple definition, like the definition of other branches of psychology. The first part, we talk about attitudes and social cognition. Define persuasion, explain social cognition. Before entering this part, I like to show you this part, persuasive, technology, Stanford. This is Stanford University. Stanford University has a lab for behavior design. Behavior design lab, models and method for behavior change. It's very important for businessmen or businesswomen. Why? Because one part of your behavior you're trying in, for example, sales, is about change behavior, changing other people's sales behavior or buying behaviors. You see here about the models and methods for behavior change. A chapter about Dr. B.J. Falk, behavior design. Dr. B.J. Falk in Stanford Change Behavior or Behavior Design Lab has created a model for how we can change other people's behaviors. You can see it here. I want to start or stop, for example, you go here and I want to restart, start and increase. And for example, from now on, you can see different approaches about behavior. Let me show you the components of behavior change based on this model. This is Dr. Falk with a very major famous book, so-called Tiny Habits. Tiny Habits is a perfect book for creating change in yourself and other people. Now, change management and change coach is one of the greatest approaches to creating any type of change, individually or organizational or social. It's very important. How we can change other people? It's very important. When we are talking about Stanford Behavior Change Lab, we are talking one of the greatest universities all around the world to work on psychological deep and sometimes not so deep, shallow issues. It talks about B equal MAP or MAP. B about MAP, M for motivation, A for ability, and P for prompt. And B for behavior. Behavior happens when motivation, ability, and prompts come together at the same moment. Also, in Transformation Center of Excellence in Calamere, California, Miramar University, which I direct that group, that center. We are talking and have some, at first, very introductory relationship with Stanford to work together in this model. I wish Stanford and Dr. Fogg accept our invitation and start to work together again in this part of California, especially in San Diego, in Irvine, and maybe in Los Angeles, to work in behavior change. Please go to Stanford after class and read about this project. It's very good, very, very good. Research and project, about us, overview, and research and resources. Okay, you can come here. It is behavior grid. You can see when you want to create change in yourself and other people's, you have 5 types of behavior. Behavior green, blue behavior, purple behavior, gray behavior, and black behavior. These are at the top. In green behaviors, we want to do new behaviors. One that is unfamiliar. It is completely new behavior. It is called green behavior. Blue behavior, you want to create familiar behavior, some changes in your familiar behaviors. In purple behavior, you don't want to create a new change. You want to increase behavior intensity or duration. The same behavior, what with a new intensity or new duration. About, for example, persuasion. It is called also persuasive technology in Stanford. And what is gray behavior? Decreased behavior intensity or duration, in opposite of purple behavior. And finally, black behavior is changing for stop doing a behavior. So you can find 5 types of changes in behavior in different colors. Green behavior, at the one extreme is green behavior, creating completely new behaviors. On the other extreme, it is black behaviors. Black behaviors are fully stopping a behavior. And it is about the duration, the frequency. If you want it only one time, it is dot behavior. Done one time. It is dot, D-O-T. Do one time. If you want to duration such as 40 days, it is a span behavior with a duration. And if you want to create a behavior for whole of your life, it is called path behavior. It's a permanent change. So 3 types of change: only changing for one time, changing for the interval, for a duration of time, it is span behavior, and creating a change for your whole life. It is called path behavior. 5, multiple 3, we have 15 models of behavior change based on the theory of Dr. Fogg in Stanford that you can see. We have green dot, blue dot, purple dot, blue span, or purple or gray span, or black path, and other parts. What type of behavior do you want and in which duration? For example, you want to completely stop a behavior for all your life. It is black path. Why it is black? Because you want to stop totally a behavior. Why it is path? Because you want to stop it for all of you, for your whole life, for your whole lifespan. It is called black path behavior, black path change. It's a model. And as a future leadership, as a future manager, modern manager, especially in developed countries like America, like Central Europe, like North Europe, like some parts of, not all parts, not some parts of Middle East, and especially as a major woman or man in the leadership of Far East, in Oriental countries like China, like Japan, like, for example, Korea. It is very important to know about the models of changing behavior. If you don't know how to change behavior, sorry, you cannot do anything in your life. It is not about the philosophy of mind. Even it is not only about the very simple behavioral principles, simples of behaviorism or behavior modification. It's about a new model. Also, this model is not so new. It is about 2007. But yes, it is. They are working on it just now in Stanford. And one of the good theories about behavior change or change management. It's a part of social psychology. We are talking about how behaviors are shaped under the influence of other people. So, as you see here, social psychology is the scientific study of how people's thoughts, feelings, and actions are affected by others. Don't forget these three major parts of your mind. Psychology talks about three major parts: your thinking, your feeling, your acting, your thoughts, cognitions, your feeling, emotions, and your acting, your behaviors. So we have three major components in psychology for talking about, for studying about, and other things: thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, which the professional word we can use are cognition, affects, and behaviors. We have cognitive neuroscience, we have affective neuroscience also in Stanford again, and many parts of psychology. It is about behavioral sciences. Also in America, we have different parts of behavioral sciences in organizations, in industry, in childhood, in ADHD, in autism. Everybody here is about ABA model. B is for applied behavior, for example, in autism, it is ABA, applied or autism behavior, for example, applications, using behaviorism and behavioral changing in different aspects of life. Especially as a leader, as a manager, you should know how to change other people's attitude. It's very important, which is called persuasive technology. One part is persuasive technology. Honestly, I don't know why this part of psychology is sometimes called dark psychology. Dark psychology, including persuasive technology, NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and body language is very important. It is sometimes called manipulation psychology or manipulation or dark psychology. Why? Because you can find and you can use them and persuade other people to do something. But it is not about the blackmail, it is not about the fraud. You are creating change in other people intentionally. The most important part, it is intentionally, not randomly, with a program based on the sciences. What are the source of sciences researches? What are the source of researchers, the money that people, general population pay to universities to do a great research, for example, on the procedures and models and methods for creating change in other people. Because of that, many politicians, many politicians, also we have a branch in psychology, so-called political psychology. Political psychology is the scientific studying of behaviors and mental processes in politics and politicians. It is political psychology. It's very important. Like military psychology. Military psychology is a very moneymaker branch of psychology in US Army. Everything from targeting and shooting by the guns or aggressive behaviors in the war or adopting with the war-related post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and other things, it are all under umbrella so-called military psychology and other parts of psychology. So it is science. It is not dark. It is not white. It is not positive. It is not negative. It is neutral. Science is neutral. It is related to you, that how can you want to use the science? It is something like the novel story. Novel, the founder of dynamite. Dynamite was a very explosive material which he wanted to use before the entering to the 20th century. He wanted to use for exploding the mines and to mining and other things. One day, his brother died, and the newspapers, right, in the newspaper, said that Alfred Nobel, the founder of explosion, the founder of catastrophe in our life, died. But also it was a mistake. His brother was dead. And Alfred Nobel thought, what type of thinking other people have about me? They don't think that I am an inventor of dynamite explosion for mining and other useful and peaceful consumptions. They think, no, I have created something for creating catastrophe in other people's life. So he sold everything and found Nobel Prize, which is from the name of the Alfred Nobel Prize in different aspects of science at first, for example, medicine, mathematics. And after some years, the branch of economy added to Nobel Prize, and now we have Peace Nobel Prize and also Literature Nobel Prize and other things. Because of that, it is very important to change other people's attitude about us. It's a science, especially in organizations. We were talking about some types of creating job satisfaction in other people in organization as a leader. And we know that, for example, monetary compensation models or compensation plans doesn't work so good in organization. If your employees only want to work for you only for money, it's so bad for the organization. There is no sense of belongingness in your organization, no creativity, no zest, no vitality in your organization. They are some live robots, only working for the outcome. The job is not satisfaction. The job is money. The job is not satisfaction. The job is money. If you want to make sense to their job, yes, the job of their job is something besides money. For example, satisfaction, happiness, sense of belonging, sense of goodness to working in such a company. So social psychology can help managers, leaders in basic concepts about creating and maintaining desirable change in their organizations. Because of that, I love this chapter very much, and I think it is one of the greatest chapters in the course of general psychology. What are attitudes? We are talking about changing attitudes. Changing attitudes is called persuasion. We are called attitude. Attitudes is evaluations of particular person, behavior, belief, or concept. It is the basic definition of attitude. Hi, Robin. I am at the class. Can I call you back after ending this class? Your voice is not so clear. Can I call you back after ending the class? Thank you. Attitude change depends on three factors: message source, characteristic of the message, and characteristic of the target. It's something like, for example, satellites. We have three parts: sender, message channel, and receiver. All parts are important in the process of working a satellite. Satellite should send you the messages, and your receiver should be on and receive the messages. And the channel, for example, the channel wave between the satellite and the receiver should work so good. If it doesn't work so well, okay, it cannot work. Because of that, message source, characteristic of the message, and characteristic of target are very important are very important factors in analyzing and creating the attitudes. But we have two types of processing for changing the attitude. In movies, in cinema, or in behaviors, we have two parts: content and form. Now, in the recent years, They also consider the context. They have three major components to creating change in all aspects of human life, especially in art, especially in very human-based relationship like relationships in organizations. We have three parts: content of the message, form of the message, and context of the message. Now we are talking about the process involved in two major components of a message. First, content of the message. Two, form of the message, how the message is provided. For example, even a very aggressive face, very aggressive face, you say somebody, I love you, he or she said, sorry, your face doesn't say this. Your face is so angry, so aggressive, but your voice says, I love you. This is called emotional incongruency, not congruency. Congruency is mean that there is a congruency, the harmonization between your feelings and your behaviors. Your feeling says that I'm angry. Your behavior says, I love you. It is incongruent, not congruent. People will be confused that what are you talking about? Your face says something and your action says something else. It is, they are not harmonized together. They are not working together. Because of that, it is called mood incongruency. Mood incongruency in psychopathology, mood incongruency is the state that your mood, your affect, your emotion does not any type of congruency with your action. In other types, when you feel that I'm happy, but you have a very monotone talking, not up, not down. In a flat rate, flat space, you are talking very flat. But you say, yes, I am so happy. I feel that I am so happy. I love to be here and joyful joining the happy class. And I said, sorry, your voice doesn't show that you are happy. It's monotone, not I am very happy or I am very happy. It's monotone. I am very happy and I am happy to be here with you and about the course of social psychology and other things. It is incongruent. You are saying, you are telling that you are happy, but your voice doesn't show that you are happy. It is mood incongruency between your action as talking and your feeling as happiness. There is no congruency, not harmonization. Because of that, in every aspect of behavioral analysis and behavioral preparation for change, we have two aspects: aspect of content and aspect of form. Aspect of content says message interpretation characterized by thoughtful consideration of the issues and argument used to persuade. What are important for us? Issues and argument in message. It is central root processing. Central root is meant talking about the major part, the content of the message. But in peripheral root processing, in peripheral root processing, we are talking about how message is provided. How message is provided. It is about the form of messaging, not about the content. It's not important what you are talking about. It's important how you are talking about that topic. It's about your body language, your tonality, your voices, your, for example, if you are a text message in the, for example, emojis you are using or GIF you are using, all are about the ways, about the procedure you are sending your message, or you are providing your message, or you are receiving the message. So we have two types of processing in data collection about the data about the changes can be done in a message. Central root processing and peripheral root processing. Central root is about uh, the content of the message, but peripheral is message interpretation, characterized by consideration of the source and related general information rather than of the message itself. Cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is one of the most popular problems for many people, including me, including you. Sometimes it is called ambivalence. Ambivalence is about the emotions. Ambivalence is that you have different oppositional, contradictory emotions about one thing. For example, in love, sometimes you have the hate and love about a person at the same time. Different, different, different things about one, different emotion, different contradictory emotions about one single thing. For example, you love someone, at the same time you are so angry about him or her and experience some types of, for example, uh, some types of hate about himself or about herself at the same time, simultaneously. It is called ambivalence. Cognitive dissonance is the cognitive part of ambivalence. Ambivalence is basic about your emotions. Different positive and negative emotions, having and expressing different emotions, positive emotion, negative emotions about one subject at the same time, simultaneously. It is ambivalence. For example, hate and love. Just at the one time, you experience hate and love about one subject, about one person, about one object and other things. When you have different oppositional, contradictory cognition, thoughts, minds about one thing, it is called cognitive dissonance. There is no resonance about your cognition dissonance. You cannot have a good integrated thinking about one person. The conflict that occurs when a person holds two contradictory attitudes or thoughts. We experience it in many times. For example, you love business sciences and you think, yes, I have a good feeling about business sciences. I think learning business sciences can help me to be helpful in the market for other people, creating good services for them. At the same time, it can be so moneymaker for me. It's a positive thought. At the other side, you think what the science I am learning and educating for. It is not about the deep parts of human, only about giving and taking, only about business. So at the same time, sometimes some people feel that business is not science, business only a skill. And it doesn't worth to work on it, for example, for 8 years to gain your DBA. Different contradictory thought cognitions about one single thing. It is cognitive dissonance. Look at the picture. Our target receive one message. At one part, he or she think, I am highly involved, so motivated, and so attentive about this message. So I have some central root processing about the content of the message, and our message will be strong, lasting attitude change. The change will become so stronger and lasting attitude change. On the other parts, someone else or the same person can be not highly involved and be unmotivated and not inattentive. His or she is inattentive. So the change will be about peripheral root processing and worker, less president, weaker, less persistent attitude change. You can see different types of attitude change in one person in about one single things. at one approach, when you have central root processing, the attitude change will be a very strong attitude change, a long-lasting attitude change. On the contradictory part, you don't have any good motivated about the change. So your processing is not about the content of change. You don't look at who is that what they are talking to you about. You think that who is talking to me. You are thinking about the source of the message, not about the content of message. You are thinking about the environment that you are receiving your message, not about your content of message. It is peripheral roots analysis, peripheral root processing. So the attitude change will not be so strong, will not be so long lasting. It is a weak change, very weak change, and less persistent change, very temporary change. You can find change. I show you in the Stanford model of behavior change that in the duration of change, we have change in three types. One, changes only for one time. Two, changes for less than 40 years. And three, changing for persistent change, more than 40 days. Sometimes for long life, sometimes, for example, 1 year or 2 years. Five types of concepts about the change. From the one extreme that says change, we want to create a permanent change. At the other extreme was we want to stop completely a previous behavior. It is black change. And three types of duration, only one time, near 40 days, and more than 40 days, and long-lasting change. In that model, you can find something like this. Any question?
No questions.
Yeah. Do you have any question?
Um, mm, yes, I think I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean like dissonance?
Dissonance is not harmonized,
Hmm.
not to be completed with each other. It is called not harmonized. When you say cognitive dissonance, it means it is not harmonized.
Hmm.
Because of that, it is cognitive dissonance. You cannot create a congruency between your different oppositional, contradictory approaches to one thing. It is one thing, but you have some contradictory thoughts thinking about the same thing. At one part, you think, yes, it is very good. I am so motivated. I'm so engaged, so involved with it. And it is for me to create some changes based on the content of the message. It is not important how I have received this message. It is not important who is talking to me. It is important only content of the message. So attitude change will be so long and strong. At the other hand, on the other hand, you think that no, I cannot accept this message from such a person. It's important for me how I am receiving the message. So I'm not motivated to working with that person. It is about peripheral roots processing. So the change cannot be so long life and persistent and permanent. It is very weak and in a very short duration of time. It is different. And when you experience these different contradictory cognition thought at the same time, it is called cognitive dissonance. For example, in love situations, many people experience cognitive dissonance when they think that that girl or that boy is a very good girl, very pretty girl, very sufficient and efficient boy. So love is in there. Romance is the air, and everything is good. But culture based or religion based, we have some contradictory situation. For example, from different religions. from different countries, from different cultures. And in one side, it's good. On other one side, it is not so good. You have cognitive dissonance. We cannot have a very strong decision about some situation, such situation. Because of that, you will experience some degrees of anxiety in your mind, in your body. If it is only about the emotion, it is not called cognitive dissonance. It is called ambivalence. Ambivalence it is having opposition or positive and negative emotions about one single things. Okay. Social cognition. In learning, the last phrase in psychology about learning is social learning. We have three types of learning: classical learning, classical conditioning learning, operant conditioning learning, and social learning. Social learning sometimes is called observational learning or social learning. It means that it is not important about a stimulus you have in life for creating your response. And also, it is not important about the outcomes that you expect in the future you will receive to create some types of behavior now in yourself, in your environment. These are two types of conditioning. Classical conditioning, the relationship between a stimulus and response, and apparent conditioning, the relationship between you, your actions, your behaviors, and the expected future, perceived future. These are two basic types of learning. The third type, which is very important, very frequent, very popular, very current in all aspects of your life, is observational learning. Observational learning or social learning is a phrase coined by Bandura. Bandura is one of the most important psychologists in the history of psychology. I think he is within the first 10 psychologists in all the history of psychology. Albert Bandura, he is alive just now, and he worked also. He has been retired now. He worked in British Columbia University, BCU, and UBC, University of British Columbia, and also in Stanford. He worked on two concepts. First, self-efficacy, which is very important about the components of yourself. Self has many components. The major three components of selves are self-confidence, self-esteem, and self-efficacy, which totally together shape your self-concept. Self-concept, besides your body image, shape your self-image. These are some structures for creating and for studying self. Self-efficacy is your value about the importance of yourself in creating your success. It is self-efficacy. And the other words, which is very important, more important than self-efficacy, is about observational learning or social learning by Albert Bandura. So now we want to talk about social cognition, not social learning. Cognition is the professional word we use for different aspects of your thought, not your mind. Your mind has two parts: thought and emotions, beliefs and emotion, beliefs and feelings. One part is about your thought, about your beliefs. When we are talking social cognition, it means the cognitive processes by which people understand and make sense of others and themselves. The key sentences in the object of make sense of something or creating meaning of something is: the meaning of life is the meaning you give to life. The meaning of life is the meaning you give to life. But it is because it is very hard for all people to create meaning of life. It is very hard. Because of that, people experience some degrees of depression. Why? Because they lose the previous meanings of life, or they cannot create new meanings of life. It is nihilism. Nihilism is not about the meaning of life. It is about that there is no final goal for the life. I am here because I am here. There is no final goal. And also, if you work on nihilism so deep, sometimes it ends to, for example, suicidal ideation. Why I am here? It is not important that this year I die or after 4 decades I die. It is not important. Not for me, not for the world. It is suicidal ideation, creating some ideas in your mind about suicide or sometimes about homicide, killing other people, or genocide, killing and damage a completely race. It is called genocide. Okay. So social cognition, it is about the cognition that you use to create meaning for your social life. As an additional extra information, you should know about the different parts of your brain. Not only for every specific aspect of your life. Some aspects of your brain are involved, which is called a specific brain. For example, you have sexual brain, you have social brain, you have a spiritual brain. I had a PDF book in my computer. The title of book was Architecture Brain. What parts of brain are involved in mind like an architecture? Okay. For different aspects of your life, we have learning brain, sexual brain, social brain, emotional brain, religious brain, spiritual brain. On the other side, on the other hand, all different parts of brain work together as a whole. It's brain. Also, a major content, a major part of brain is involved with sensor, with your sensation, five senses: olfactory, auditory, touch, pressure, and light pressure, light touch, and pain and other senses. So make sense and sense making and meaning creation, meaning production is a part of your brain. But your brain is highly influenced by your social experiences. Because of that, many people cannot adapt with the new environment. Something like immigration. Many people in immigration cannot adapt with the new situation. Why many people think that all people cannot change easily? Also, it's a false belief. It's a false belief. Why many people think that they cannot change in the old people? Why? Because they think that old people have a long history of life, and if they want to create any types of changing, they should destroy the history of life. But it's a false belief, because changing doesn't mean that you have some part of, for example, previous life. It means that you want to create new ways of life for the future. But for example, when you are at the after age of 16, you think, I don't have any enough time for creating some new aspects of life. Because of that, finally, hopelessness create helplessness. It's very important. If you are hopeless about the future, after sometimes you think that I don't have any new way in my life. It is called helplessness. And as uh, Martin E.P. Seligman, the founder of positive psychology, said that it is learned helplessness. Learned helplessness. There is a title of book with this title of learned helplessness, and other book is learned optimism. Learned helplessness is about the experiments on dogs. After some times, dogs understood that it is not important what they were doing. Everything they do, they will have the same consequences. Different actions doesn't lead to new different consequences. Different actions, the same consequences. It is called learned helplessness. They learn to have a helpless role in their life. You can find it in many, for example, dictatorship countries or governments. If people think it is not important that we protest or not, the government do the same thing, and it is not important for government. The population or people are not important for government. It is called social learned helplessness. So one part of social cognitions is the schemas. Schema settles cognitions about people and social experiences. For example, if you have some bad experience in the early ages of your life with, for example, one specific race, only as a classmate, for example, you have some bad experiences with the specific races of in your classmates. He or she is not a representative of all his or her race, but you have only the experience with that race with your classmate. If you think that all that race are something like my classmate, it is a set of cognitions about people and social experiences. After that, it is the second part is impression formation, how we organize information about another person to form an overall impression of that person. If you think, yes, that man or that woman is lazy, he or she is always lazy. Why? I have seen, for example, 2 times in the last year, and in all 2 times, he or she was asleep. You gain some samples and generalize to the overall impression of that person. It is called impression formation. You form an overall impression about one person, about one race, about one ethnicity, about one nationality, about one part of, for example, world, or a geographical territory. Why we do it? Because it makes the prediction so easier, many easier when you have some general models. Because of that, we create some habits in our life for prevention and prediction. If you can prevent something in the future, if you can predict something in the future, you can have some prevention about the future. It is called control. Science has 4 major functions: description, explanation, prediction, and control. Description and explanation is about the statistics, and prediction and control, it is about technology. Because of that, science begins with the statistics and finalizes with technology. Statistics is before science, and technology is after science. The result of science is technology. As you want to describe and define technology for an elementary school student, you say technology is the application of science. After science is called technology in 2 parts: prediction and control. Before science is statistics, for description and explanation. Description, what you observe. Prediction, explanation is about why what you are observed is doing something like this, about the causes, about the correlation, about the happening at the same time simultaneously. It's about explanation. When you want to explain something, you want to talk about the causes, about the processes. But in description, you want to talk about the process. You only want to talk about the what you are observing. One of the greatest, one of the most important and crucial components about impression formation is central traits. Central traits are the major traits considered in forming impressions of others. For example, we know that Korean people eat a lot of fish foods. Many people think that their goodness, their high quality of their skin and hair is about eating many fish, many seafoods. Also about Chinese, also about Japanese, all Oriental countries, Far East. But it is not scientifically approved. It is not scientifically approved. Why? Because other peoples from other races, under, for example, 2 or 3 years experiments, have eaten many seafoods, but there is no major change in the quality of their hair or skin. It is more related to their genetics, not to their seafood. But popular says that no, it is about the, for example, seafoods. These are the central traits. Because of these central traits, we can use these central traits to shape, to form an impression, for example, about Korean people. The impression about Korean people is that they have good quality of hair and skin. The central trait is because of food habits, eating habits. Why? Because they have a lot of, for example, seafood in their regular diets, all types of seafood. So in every type of impression formation, you should find central traits. What the central traits you are talking about? Social cognition, attribution theory. Is there any question? Let me check.
No,
Is there any question?
no, no question.
Okay. Attribution theory. What is attribution? Attribution is about how can we explain, how can we about talk about causality and the roots of something in the world? It is attribution. Six, to explain how we decide on the basis of samples of an individual's behavior what the specific causes of that person's behaviors are. When we are talking about attribution, we are talking about the causes, the roots, the foundation of that, for example, attitude. We consider two types of causes in attribution theory. One, situational causes. Two, dispositional causes. It is nature and nurture. What causes is related to the situation. For example, we say situational leaders. Situational leaders are types of leaders that they are only leaders because of their organizational situations. And other dispositional leaders. Dispositional leaders, we are talking about charismatic leaders. Why? Because their leadership skills are not related to their situation in one specific organization. If they are working, for example, as a simple worker, after sometimes you see that he or she would be a good leader for other simple workers. Why? Because the charismatic, because the dispositional, because the personality and character traits they have. It is not related to the situations of organization. In all aspects, in all dimensions of life, you can find these two aspects. One, situations. Two, disposition. Disposition, sometimes it's called natural, sometimes it's called mother-born, sometimes it is called genetic, inherent, and other words we can use to dispositional situations or dispositional causes. We attribute the actions with two causes. One, situational causes. Two, dispositional causes. Situational causes, perceived causes, it is not about the real causes. Note that it is not about real causes. You are attribute something to other thing. It is your perception of the causes. It is not about the real causes. It is your perceived causes. Perceived causes of behavior that are based on environmental factors. For example, I said yes, because the Korea has a good sunlight, many people has a good quality skin. It is about the environment. It is about the situation. It means that if Korean people go to other country without any good sunlight, their quality of the skin will destroy. But they traveled many times, many years to other countries, but we cannot find any change in their quality of their skin. So it is not situational. It is not related to the situation, to the environment. It is related to disposition. Other parties, dispositional causes, perceived causes of behavior that are based on internal traits or personality factors. Internal traits is about your body, about your physiology, about your race, about your ethnicity, about your nationality, about your genetics. And personality factors about the training. Also, it is about your not natural, not nurture, but about the nurture in the first years of your age, your childhood, not about your adulthood. Okay, let's go to have a good break for 15 minutes and just at 7 be here.
Okay.
Okay, have a good break. Welcome again to the continue of the course. We were here. Let me share it with you. It's here. Yeah. And we have two types of biases in attribution. Biases, the pre-assumptions in cognition that you think without any studying, scientific studying or data collection or data analysis, you think in such a fixed and stable manner about something. It is called bias. For example, we say attentional bias. Attentional bias that you concentrate your attention in one thing which is not so important for you. It doesn't have any sense of importance for concentration, but you have attentional bias. You concentrate your attention which in something which is not so important. Is that we have many types of biases in the psychology. One of them is the attribution biases. In attribution biases, we have two types of bias. One, the halo effect, and two, assume similarity bias. The halo effect says an initial understanding that a person has a positive trait is used to infer other uniformly positive characteristics. For example, you say, he's a good man, she is a good woman. When you say it as a general positive trait about a specific person, you create some other positive or negative aspects about that woman or man. It is halo effect. It is something like you have a total atmosphere about traits of somebody. And assume similarity biases, the tendency to think of people as being similar to oneself, even when meeting them for the first time. Especially in the love at the first glance, in family based relationships. For example, you see your cousin for the first time, he or she has been out of your country after, for example, 20 years, when you're at the age of 20, you see him or her for the first time and you think, yes, because he is my cousin, he should be like me, without any time for introduction, for gathering information, for assessment, for evaluation, but without anything. At the first time you think, because he is my cousin, he should be like me. It is assumed similarity bias. The bias about the similarity which are not approved, but you have some pre-assumption about those similarities. It is assumed similarity bias, the tendency to think of people as being similar to oneself, even when meeting them for the first time. In job interviewing, it is very important to pay attention about the attribution biases, because if the interviewer has some biases about the races, about the nations, about the geographical territories, about the ethnographical studies or ethnicities, if there is any type of these attribution biases, it can destroy the positive, real positive outcomes on interview and convert it to negative outcome, negative results. Why? Because the interviewer have some basic pre-assumptions, some basic negative focal points, basic negative biases about, for example, a specific race or a specific gender. Some interview says, for example, men are not good for some positions like nursing, which is a false belief. Or other people, some, for example, women are not some good people, for example, some position like judgment. It is not, it's a false belief. It's not true. We have many successful men in nursing. We have many successful women in judgment. Why not? But if you as an interview, if you are as an HR manager, for example, or HR employee, you will destroy the real result for your organization. So you should be so sensitive to your biases, to your peer assumptions. You should question about everything in yourself. If you want to be a good man or woman, an effective, positive, and practical man or woman in your organization, also for your own life. You should ask everything, and you should have a great question mark on all the pre-assumptions, all the biases, because the bias can shape and can switch your point of view to the other parts of your life, which are not so real in your present life. Other biases is, for example, self-serving biases. Self-serving biases tendency to attribute personal success to personal success factors and attribute failure to factor outside oneself. If I am successful because of my own skills, my own abilities, my own efforts, and if I am not successful, it is not because of me, it is because of my external environment. It is called locus of control. Locus of control is the point, is the area that you attribute your success. If you have external locus of control, it means that you think that your success is not related to yourself, it is related to your environmental situation. It is external environmental situation. It is called external locus of control. On the other hand, if you think that you have an internal locus of control, it means that you think your success is related to your own abilities, own skills, own efforts, to your skills, to your abilities, not only for your external environment. It is internal locus of control. Locus of control is one of the greatest theory that you should think about in your executive coaching. It's very important that your personnel, that your employee, that do they think about the future, about the success, about the abilities, about the esteem, about the self-concept. It's very important. Many of these concepts are engaged and are involved in the definition and theory of locus of control. Other things, it's fundamental attribution error. I have a very, very good memory of this phrase. It was the first phrase I learned in psychology when I wanted to be a psychology student before going to master degree. The first book I studied very professional was a book about general psychology, as I am teaching you just now. And in the first pages, I think page 2 or page 3, as an example, the writers talk about fundamental attribution error. So I had a very good memory. I had a very good trace about this phrase, fundamental attribution error. The example was that if someone is begging, asking money from other people in an airport, and another person, give him, for example, $100. How other people think about this gentleman? It is based on the culture. In Western culture, many people think that, yes, he is a generous man. He is a good man to want to help other people. They attribute his action to his own personal traits. But in Eastern cultures, they said, we don't know anything about the characters, about the personality of this gentleman. But we think that because he thinks that he is in the airport and can be observed by other people, he wants to show himself as a generous man, as a helper man. It is it is different in difficult culture. As your book says that it is very popular in Western cultures, that a tendency to over attribute others' behavior to dispositional causes and the corresponding minimization of the importance of situational causes. Prevalent in Western cultures. It is very prevalent in Western culture, very popular, very prevalent in Western culture. It is fundamental attribution error. It is not correct. It is error because it minimizes the situational causes. Consider the dispositional causes for the attribution. especially in the Western cultures. You see here that all the things in psychology, all the things except of the materials about brain, also some types of studies about brain also talk about the cultural differences in brain, not in the structure of brain, in the function of brain. Some parts of brain functions are relative to the culture of the brain holder, of the man or woman uh, who is using his or her brain. Except of neuropsychology and neurology and brain science, in other parts of psychology, in other matters of psychology, we are talking about the cultures. If we cannot consider cultures, you should forget it. Another matter is social influence and groups. Learning outcomes define conformity, explain compliance, and discuss obedience. Social influence, the process by which the actions of an individual or group affect the behavior of others. It is social influence. Sometimes it seems that it is very easy to consider the definitions, why we provide our students the basic definitions, because it is about science, not about philosophy, not about novels. It is about science. For every aspect of science, for every major field of science, at first you should have some types of operational definition. Before that, you should have conceptual definition. Two definitions are very important in science. One, conceptual definition. Two, operational definition. For example, sometimes we say, what is the meaning of intelligence? We say intelligence is something that helps you to discover the secrets, discover the hidden parts, to solve the problems, to calculate and to have good mathematical abilities. It is the conceptual definition of intelligence. But in operational definition, for example, we can say the intelligence is something which is tested, which is graded by the intelligence tests in the intelligence questionnaires. It is the operational definition. In the operational definition, you consider and you determine what types of operations can be used for the definition of that concept. So social influence as a conceptual definition is the process by which the actions of an individual group affect the behavior of others. And conformity. I love the book, The Originals. The Originals, it is the book about non-conformist people. Conformity, a change in behavior or attitudes brought about by a desire to follow the beliefs or standards of other people, comes from subtle, sometimes even unspoken social pressure. Subtle, sometimes even unspoken social pressure. It's a hidden social pressure. Conformity, a change in behavior or attitudes brought about by a desire to follow the beliefs or standards of other peoples. You are my follower because you think I am better than you. It's conformity. Comes from subtle, sometimes even unspoken social pressure. Sometimes you see this phenomenon in, for example, peer pressure. In peer pressure, you think that peer pressure, you see that, for example, uh, some people, some students in their school, in the higher school, have some peer pressure about their peer group. For example, about sexual identity. They said you are a boy, but like girl. You are a girl, but like a boy. It is peer group. Solomon Asch experiments says participant confirmed in about one third of the trials. Conformity higher when people must respond publicly. If you want to show yourself in a public situation, it increases the rate of conformity. You don't want to be different from other people. It calls conformity. So, in the behaviors, that those behaviors are shown in public, it's very important to higher rate of conformity. And when you are private, not in the public situations, it lowers the conformity rate. Lower when at least one other person dissents from the group. And you see that, yes, at least one person is different from the group, and not all people are like each other in that group. You see some non-conformist people. And conformity social roles, it is very important, the behaviors that are associated with people in a given situation. We have a very important part here. Let me show you. It is called, can you see the movie or not?
Movie?
Let me change the share.
No, I cannot see. Oh, now I can see.
Okay. It's a movie, so-called Stanford Prisoner Experiment.
I cannot hear the
Would you
volume.
rather be a guard or a prisoner?
Can you see it?
Um,
Can you see the movie?
yes.
I think I have the qualities to be a guard.
Prisoner.
Prisoner, I guess.
Prisoner sounds like it would be a little less work.
Prisoner.
Why's that?
Nobody likes guards.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. This experiment will be an extension of my research into the effects prisons can have on human behavior.
You're going to be pleased to know that you all have been chosen to be the prison guards.
But under no circumstances whatsoever are you to physically assault the prisoners in any way. So remember, just as you were watching the prisoners, my graduate staff and I will be watching you.
All right, gentlemen, we're gonna have ourselves a lot of fun.
Rule number 1, prisoners must remain silent. This is an exercise period.
Okay, is it just me, or are these guys taking this thing a bit too seriously?
Why don't you give me 20 push-ups?
Look at this guy. Thinks he's John Wayne or something.
You address me as Mr. Correctional Officer.
This might be an interesting 2 weeks after all.
Why don't you make up your bunk, 8612?
I did, Mr. Correctional Officer.
Well, that's not what I see.
Hey, what are you doing here?
I had no idea it would turn out this way.
Also, it is about the real story of an experiment, the most out of the norm experiment in psychology, so-called the Stanford Prisoner Experiment by Philip Zimbardo. One time, Philip Zimbardo was the American Psychological Association president. And after that, he's alive now, one of the greatest psychologists in the history of psychology, and his experiment was stopped, not finished, was interrupted because of social roles. And finally, a movie was made based on his experiment. The movie is called The Stanford Prisoner Experiment. Let me find it. And yes, it is here. Also, it's a movie. Now it's a movie. Conforming to a social role can have a powerful consequence on the behavior of anyone. Sometimes you see that people accept new roles, social roles. For example, your father become the boss of the company, and after that, you see your father's behavior have been changed as a father, not as a boss, because he's the boss of the company. Okay, congratulations. Why not? But you are still my father, not related to your father, to the paternal roles. But you see, no, sorry, the paternal roles have been changed in the home, in the family members. It is the effect of social roles in their personal behavior. And at the maximum degree, it was in Stanford prisoner experiments. Other concept in social psychology is about compliance. Compliance is behavior that occurs in response to direct social pressure. You see here conformity. It is the response to set or sometimes even unspoken social pressure, not direct conformity. What is the difference between conformity and compliance? Conformity is response to an unspoken, sometimes hidden social pressure, not direct, indirect social pressure. Your response to indirect social pressure is called conformity. Your response to direct social pressure is called compliance. You see the source of pressure, you see the actions, you see the motivations, you see the pressure. Behavior that occurs in response to direct social pressure. We have two types of techniques for creating compliance in other people. At first, we have, for example, we want this desire, we want this request, and we say a very higher and higher request, and after that, we will discount the request and decrease the request until the first desire level. For example, people are more likely to agree to a more important request if they have first agreed to a smaller one. It is an opposite situation. I want, for example, a request at the degree of 10. At first, I want a degree. I ask a request for degree 2, and after that, increase to degree 3, and after that, increase to degree 5, and after that, increase to a degree 8. Finally, after 3 months, I ask you the request at the degree of 10. It is foot in the door techniques. This technique is called foot in the door, increasing the degree of request from the lowest level to the highest level. It is about increasing. Smaller, smaller, smaller. Other techniques in door in the face techniques. At first, I want you a very higher level request. And you said, sorry, I cannot do it. And after that, if you cannot do it, so for example, something lower or something smaller or something weaker. That weaker, that lower, that smaller request is the basic and main my request. My request was not that high request. It was fake. I used the door in the face technique. I shut the door in your face and you go back and come again to the desired request. Something like that. So for compliance, for the direct social pressure, we have two techniques: foot in the door technique and door in the face technique. Foot in the door technique, people are more likely to agree to a more important request if they have their first agreed to a smaller one. It is foot in the door. And door in the face, making a large request, expecting to be refused, then following with a smaller one, which is the targeted request. Something about increasing the request, foot in the door, and something about decreasing the request to reach to the desired request, targeted request. It is called door in the face technique. That's not all technique and not so free sample. That's not all technique. Immediately after an initial offer at an inflated price, you are offered an incentive to clinch the deal. That's not all technique. It's sometimes like, for example, in auctions, in sales, you can see that, yes, that's not all technique. And not so free sample, you feel the need to reciprocate when given a free sample, so you are more likely to buy the product based on the normal reciprocity. It is something like we can find in, for example, for others, for the perfumes, for the food sample in Costco, you see this technique, not so free sample. At first, a little sample, and after that, they created a reciprocal need in you to buy the product. The third one, after conformity and compliance, it is obedience, a change in behavior in response to commands of others. People empower authority figures. What are the difference between obedience, conformity, and compliance? What was the meaning of, let me show you. What was the meaning of conformity? Sorry, wait for people to request. In compliance, your behavior occurs in reaction, in response to a direct social pressure in compliance. Direct, very, very direct. In conformity, your response is, your behavior is in response and unspoken, not spoken, something that which is spoken. You cannot find a direct material. Let me check it. But in obedience, you find some changes in behavior. In obedience, you have an authoristic person. You have face with authority, with face a source of power. It is not always about, for example, changing behavior in direct behavior, direct response or non-direct response. You are talking about working with the source of powers. In obedience, this is obedience. A change in behavior in response to the commands of others. So the keyword for obedience is commands and change. When you have obedience, you can find some changing in behavior. Why? Because they're forceful, because about the authority, because of the source of power. People empower authority figures. Stanley Milgram experiment says that 65% of participants eventually use the highest setting on the shock generator for 150 volts. Participants said they obeyed mostly because they believed the experimenter would be responsible for any potential harm to the learner. It's one of the most famous experiments in psychology, Stanley Milgram experiments. And prejudice and discrimination is other things. So in the previous part, we talked about the social roles and social factors and social pressure. We have two types of social pressure: direct social pressure, indirect social pressure, hidden social pressure, or observable social pressure. And in two parts, we have two types of responses. Responses to hidden social pressure is called conformity. Responses to unhidden and apparent and very, very clear social pressure, spoken social pressure, is called compliance. And the other part is not about the social pressure. It is about commands. It is not about social roles. It's about the commands, about the authority figure, about the power figure. And you should change yourself. It is obedience. So we have three different vocabulary for different responses. Responses to unspoken social pressure is called conformity. Responses to spoken and not hidden and apparent social pressure is called compliance. And responses and changing in behavior in response to authority figure and commands is called obedience. Now we are going to prejudice and discrimination. At first, we should find some operational definition for the words we want to use. Stereotype. A set of generalized beliefs and expectations about a particular group and its members. It is a stereotype. When we say a stereotypic behavior, it is something like mannerism. Mannerism is the behavior that has some specific types of meaning for the observer. For example, some people in mental hospitals say this, again. It is mannerism. It is something like, for example, military actions. Stereotypic behavior sometimes had a specific meaning and and sometimes doesn't have any specific meaning. It is stereotypic behaviors, a set of generalized beliefs and expectation about a particular group and its members. For example, stereotypic behaviors, stereotypic thinking, or expectation about, for example, color skin people, about females, about males, about black people, about Indian people, about specific nationality, about Middle Eastern, about Oriental people, and other generalized and sometimes overgeneralized expectation and beliefs about a specific group of people and its member. Helping categorizing and organizing information, it is very important at first. When you can, when you have some stereotypic thinking, some pre-assumption, it helps you to categorize and make senses for the concepts, and can be negative or positive, but all the stereotypes oversimplify the word. It's your mind need to oversimplify the word, because the real word is simply, but not oversimple. You want to get it oversimplified. Why? Because of prediction and prevention. Because of that, it can be oversimplified. The first one can be negative or positive. Yes, sometimes it is positive, negative and positive. And prejudice is a negative or positive evaluation of a particular and its member. It is attitude. It is different from a stereotype. It is evaluation, good or bad. When you are talking about a stereotype, you are talking about the beliefs, expectation. Sometimes it is good, sometimes it is bad, but it only helps you to oversimplify the word. It only helps you to categorize the world, to categorize the people, to categorize the nations. Not about the actions, only categorization. Stereotypic behaviors, stereotypic thinking, stereotypic beliefs helps you to oversimplify the world, to oversimplify the races, the ethnicities, the nations, for example, genders and other things. But not about the judgment. But prejudice is a type of judgment, type of evaluation. Based on your prejudice, you say that, yes, it is good and it should be here, and it is not good and it should not be here. Because of prejudice. A negative or positive evaluation of a particular group and its member. It's a type of attitude. Attitude was a matter of evaluation. When you are talking about attitude, you are talking about evaluation. So prejudice is a type of attitude. General attitude about a particular group or, for example, nation. And discrimination. Wow, such a dark word we are using. Behavior directed toward individuals on the basis of their membership in a particular group. We are not only talking about, for example, races as a group, or genders as a group, or religion as a group, or geographical territory as a group. We are talking about the members in a particular group. And discrimination is about the behaviors. Please note that. Stereotypes is a matter of beliefs. Prejudice is a matter of evaluation, judgment. And discrimination is a matter of behaviors. You can see the discrimination in their behavior, not only in their mind as their evaluation, as their prejudice, not only in their beliefs as the stereotypic behaviors or stereotypic thinking. You can see the discrimination in their behavior, in their actions. Because of that, discrimination is a matter of behavior. It is completely observable. The foundation of prejudice are not innate, they are learned. Wait a minute, change the slide. The foundation of prejudice. Prejudice are not innate, they are learned at first. There is no genetic or inherited or mother-born attitude to other people. You learn it. It is not innate, they are learned. Observational learning approaches and social identity theory. One approach to why and how we learn prejudice is about observational learning attitude or approach by Albert Bandura. The behavior of parents, other adults, and peers shapes children's feelings about the members of various groups. Prejudice is learned through imitation and reward and punishment. The key word for the observational learning is imitation, doing the same actions, having the same beliefs, experience the same feelings of our parents, of our peer groups, of our friends. Another approach to learning the prejudice is social identity theory. People tend to be ethnocentric. Ethnocentric is concentration on your ethnicity. This is ethnocentric. People tend to be ethnocentric, to be concentrated on their ethnicity, viewing the world from their own perspective and judging others in terms of their group membership. For example, we know some ethnocentric conflict between Japan and China. It is ethnocentric. If you look at their problems, you can find the roots for over than 200 years ago. It is culture-based, not for the new modern life. It is about for example, 1,000 years ago. Ethnocentric. Everybody is considered a world with their worldview as an ethnicity, as a race. And they said, this is for us or on us, against us. It is social identity theory. What is social identity? Social identity is the identity you have or you receive because of your society you are living for or you belong to. For example, for immigrants, there's a problem with social identity. They grew up in the country which is not their family roots. For example, my son is growing in America. His culture, his mindset is becoming and shaping some types of American style. But his parental roots is not American. So we have some conflict in his social identity. Social identity is American, but ethnocentric is, for example, Persian. So it is a new type of identity, which is called, for example, Iranian American community, Iranian American, for example, culture, Korean American downtown. Specific part that in very big country like America, it is possible to have your own territory. But in small countries like countries of Europe, it is not easy to have your own territory because the country is not so big to give you a specific location or you can obtain the right of your community. In that situation, for refugees, for immigrants, it is very hard to have social identity. The implicit personality test, the final things that we want to talk about, it is implicit association. It allows for measures of subconscious attitudes toward members of a specific group, of which people are not aware and may not want to reveal. It is in Harvard. You can go to Harvard and do it. Let me show you. It is Project Implicit in Harvard. You can you see it or not?
No.
Let me. Can you see it now?
No.
Let me share you. It is Project Implicit for the implicit association test. that shows you the member of a specific groups of which are not aware or may not want to reveal the subconscious attitude, not conscious attitude, a little more hidden than conscious attitude, not so deep as unconscious attitude, because if an unconscious attitude is unconscious, it is not called attitude. Attitude is your evaluation. You should be conscious about it. But sometimes your sharpness, your consciousness is not so sharp. You cannot attain your consciousness so easily. It is a little hidden. It is a little deeper than your consciousness, which is called subconsciousness. Not so deep like unconscious, not so shallow like your consciousness. It is semi-conscious, or sometimes it is called subconscious. It's a very good test. You can find it also. I will put it in the Moodle to do it. Okay, we can go for the test. Have you done your test, or you want to do it just now?
I finished my quiz.
Have you done your quiz or not?
Yes, I have done my
Okay. So study hard for the next week. Next week is the final week.
Yes,
And I
I
am
know.
certain about your grade. You are a hard worker student. I love your works, and I know that you have the best grade in the between other students. You work so hard, and it is the most important thing that you have for your success. But hard working. After that, you will have a good grade, which is not the symbol of the future success, but it's the good point for future success. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Bye. Have a good night.
Have a nice evening. Have a nice weekend.